Hello and welcome to another Wrestling Roundtable Discussion podcast. I'm Adam Wilbourn from WhatCulture, joined by the Dudley boys of WhatCulture, Michael Hamflett and Michael Sidgwick, to discuss a burning wrestling issue. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes or Spotify for daily wrestling podcasts where we discuss Raw, SmackDown, pay-per-views. We have interviews, we have more roundtable discussions just like this one, and we have a roundup of the week complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. But gents, we are just a few days removed from the Royal Rumble. We are on the road to WrestleMania. So looking forward, I want us to try and predict some elements of the WrestleMania 35 card. And let's start with the obvious thing, the main event of WrestleMania. Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins won their respective Royal Rumble matches. So what should be the main event of WrestleMania 35?
You know for a fact this is a rhetorical question.
Yes.
It's a rhetorical question. There is only one possibility, and that is Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch versus Charlotte Flair. I'm convinced I have to go with the triple threat route because it'll just be a far better match. And I think for once, a triple threat match is usually just this tacked on thing to a singles program, so they've got a designated guy who they can get a pinfall over. This is the most organic triple threat match they've ever built, and by virtue of it being a triple threat match, because Charlotte Flair is absolutely outstanding, it'll be a far better match. And you get two full-time women getting the rub of being able to lay the claim to, like, we've headlined WrestleMania now, so we're clearly like legends. You know, it just makes perfect sense.
I was completely with that until Monday Night Raw's Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch face-off. There was something about that face-off that just, it evoked so many memories of all the wrestling I fell in love with as a kid, the great storylines that carried me through, like the Attitude Era and the years where like people switched off the product, those little moments, those singles matches that were built from a spark between two wrestlers, two performers that you believed in, that didn't feel like they were performing, you know, that didn't feel like that they were doing anything that they wouldn't do if they were real people acting as they believed. And for all that Charlotte Flair and everything Sidgwick said about it is correct, this is a very organic triple threat, like with a stipulation that is never really organic, is it? There's never really a reason for a triple threat, and yet I'm now completely hooked on the singles match. I could be disproven by the next few Raws and SmackDowns where Charlotte could be easily inserted. They've got all the storyline to do it. But for me personally, I'm all about the Rousey-Lynch singles match, and definitely is the headliner, definitely is the main event.
Where do you think in the card we're going to get Rollins and Brock Lesnar? Do you think they're going to think it's probably more worthy of a WrestleMania event? At the end of the day, Seth Rollins main evented the Rumble when a lot of people said probably Becky Lynch should have been the closing image of that Rumble. So do you think maybe the company are going to go? Because I completely agree. I think as much as there is a really decent story, if they tell it correctly between Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar, I think it should be Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey, with probably Charlotte Flair in there. Although, as you suggested, I'd be quite happy with Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey. But do you think Vince is going to see it differently?
For two reasons, I don't think Vince will see it differently. One, they are, I don't know if you've noticed this, but they're actually quite cloying about the way they're promoting women's wrestling is really progressive. You know how Stephanie does all the things? Yeah. So without being a facetious little bellend about it, I do think that they are really striving to get that main event. It's the first time it's felt remotely worthy of actually going on last, like to an undisputed degree. No one would bat an eyelid. Only the worst kind of incel trolls would go, but what about the men? So I just think for that reason, it's happening. And as for Seth Rollins versus Brock Lesnar, I genuinely think, and this is a totally potentially absurd, cynical take, but I think the one reason why, the other reason, why it will not go on last is because Brock Lesnar's going over in that match. I can just see Vince on the day just taking one look at Seth Rollins and knowing how, when it gets close to the end zone with Brock Lesnar, he always sort of develops this like newfound love all over again for the man. And I just think he's going to take one look at Seth Rollins on the day, and it won't matter how popular he is or anything like that. He's just going to go, nah, Brock, do you want a new deal when you can carry this Universal Championship? I'm just not convinced that they think enough of Seth Rollins to put him over in a match of that magnitude on that stage. I just don't think he's going over.
Mad as it is to say, in a product where you can decide ahead of time how you want people to sort of be in these storylines, that's exactly the way it would go down as well, isn't it? It could be Rollins, all the way to WrestleMania, and then a day of decision where Vince changed his mind. You know, we were told a streak was conquered, you know, over the weekend. Vince McMahon just had this feeling, now it's time to do it. Last year's WrestleMania, like what we saw in the 24 documentary where Brock Lesnar chucks the belt at the Vince McMahon afterwards, there was no context wrapped around it, but the intention was pretty clear. Even Brock assumed he'd be getting shot of that to give it to Roman Reigns, and yet somehow Vince McMahon has said, nah, actually, you keep it, mate. I like you. That's the exact way it would go down. And I certainly think if Stephanie McMahon or WWE are going to want to tell the world that they've got this incredible women's wrestling storyline, they're going to tell us. They're going to tell us ahead of time. I actually think that's going to be one of the things that isn't going to be used to build suspense to WrestleMania. I don't think there's going to be any doubt about this being the main event. Becky Lynch even pointed to the sign and mouthed, "I'm going to be in the main event of WrestleMania at the Royal Rumble." That wasn't something Seth Rollins did. It wasn't something that Seth Rollins or Triple H did when talking about the match on Raw. Triple H was telling Seth to make the decision about Bryan or Brock, but it wasn't, "You're in the main event of WrestleMania." I actually think they're in the process of telling us that the women's match is going to be going on last, and they'll make it abundantly clear before the show itself.
Yeah, I was very much of the opinion when it was announced immediately after WrestleMania 34 that it was going to be Ronda versus Charlotte in the main event of WrestleMania. I was very much of the opinion they have to justify it, along with everyone else, along with, when they had Cena Rock and they said that's going to be the WrestleMania main, it has to be a reason behind it. And I wasn't happy that they were just going to be put in there because it's women's wrestling.
Yeah.
But, like you say, if there ever was a time to put women's wrestling in the main event of WrestleMania, it is with Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey and perhaps Charlotte Flair.
All we're after is merit. Merit adds heft to this decision, doesn't it? That's all we're after, is the match to deserve its spot.
Well, sorry, just to interrupt, one last take on that. That segment between Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch on last night's Raw was genuinely big time. It hasn't felt that big in absolutely forever. And yeah, it has to go on last.
I
has to.
Kill you with these two hands.
Awesome. We've got an actual legit killer and a believer as well.
Mm-hmm.
They got a legit killer, someone who's completely over to a massive degree, credibly going up against an actual killer. Just give us it in the main event. It has to be the main event.
We'll get on to Asuka and the SmackDown Women's Championship in the next few minutes. But before we do that, we mentioned Daniel Bryan and the WWE Championship. Who should Bryan face at WrestleMania? That is a really big question because there's no obvious standout contenders at the moment, is there? A lot of time still till WrestleMania, but as of right now...
Yeah, and do you know what? And I think that's okay. I think we're in a rare position here where the 2 or 3 major matches at WrestleMania thus far are pretty etched in stone, and we can kind of get ourselves excited about that. Let's have another sort of month or so of wrestlers trying to raise their game a little bit. We saw it with Charlotte realizing that WrestleMania main event was slipping from her grasp, and she upped her work rate to keep up with Becky and Ronda. And I like that sense of competitive spirit in the locker room. So if they don't yet know who Daniel Bryan is, because I can't look at that roster and say, well, that guy's definitely ready to start against Daniel Bryan. I might want to see Andrade, for example. He's having these incredible matches. Just be given the shot. I might want to see them take this ridiculous gamble on a Mustafa Ali or my favourite, a Samoa Joe. But none of them are quite yet the guy. So let's watch them all compete. I want to see this idea that all of a sudden, Vince McMahon has got a carrot that actually means something. These are the opportunities that used to matter to wrestlers once upon a time. So let's see now who wants to really sort of rise above the chasing pack and take that spot, because Bryan is there ready to get anybody over. Anybody in a feud with Daniel Bryan is going to be better off for it. So, he's after it. Who really wants it?
That's one of the things here, isn't it? It's definitely WWE Championship. It's definitely not going to be in the main event of WrestleMania unless something incredibly dramatic happens over the next few months. So having said that, and as you said, Daniel Bryan will make whoever he's facing into a credible contender, and there will be excitement around the match. Who would you like to see Daniel Bryan face?
I've got absolutely no idea. As I've written before, this is about a couple of months ago now, and they've not done anything of note to change my mind on this. There's not one babyface positioned to credibly go in a match of that magnitude, and there's no heel, potentially Andrade, but beyond him, there's no heel that fans are desperate to want to see turn face and be in that championship match. I've honestly got no clue whatsoever, and I can only at this point echo what Hamflet said. One of them needs to step up. One of them needs to step up and do something and prove themselves worthy of the occasion, because right now it's it's not a dream match to savor. It's a puzzle to solve.
Your picks up Mustafa Ali, something like that?
Well, it sounds ridiculous, though, doesn't it? Of course, it sounds daft, but we talked about Mustafa Ali as opponent for the Royal Rumble, and it didn't happen, and he fizzled a little bit as a result, because you really have to take advantage when these situations fall into your lap. Not on Ali, by the way. I'm saying WWE didn't, just elected not to go with that, and they thought we'll play it safe with AJ Styles.
I mean, they had to sell tickets. That's the thing, because at the time, no one was buying tickets for the Rumble, and for all intents and purposes, as good as he's been, and he's been really, really, really good, Mustafa Ali's not going to sell tickets.
No, I mean,
on that basis, he's not going to WrestleMania either.
If I'm looking across the brands, the only person I see is Braun Strowman. I feel like he's a guy that we once, for a long time looked at as a guy to fight Brock Lesnar. That's off the table. So it's easy enough to just morph Braun Strowman onto SmackDown for whatever reason they want to, and then have a match where theoretically, Bryan can give him a real star-making match. Braun can even go over. It's a feel-good moment that he wins the title. I don't see how we get there from where we are this week.
2 words, Eric Rowan. That's how you get there.
I mean, Vince McMahon might see that visual and think, well, yeah, like he'll squash Bryan, but with Eric Rowan in his corner, now you've got something to talk about. Maybe that's maybe Vince sees something in 2 giant bearded guys, and it just happens to be Bryan, the WWE champion. But I can't see any other babyface. Like Cedric says, I can't see any other babyface that currently yet feels at that level. Braun doesn't, but I want to believe that they can get him back there quick enough.
I can't believe the two of you, 2 of the most respected wrestling journalists that I know, have overlooked someone on the SmackDown brand who is ready and waiting and a babyface and has a great story against Daniel Bryan going into WrestleMania, and a man that will bring me pasties for days. The Miz versus Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship. Roles reversed.
It's a joke.
It's
right there.
Vegan sausage rolls are finally back in stock in all the Gregs in the Northeast, but I'm saving mine for that bet not coming in and Daniel Bryan, the vegan, winning me that sausage roll.
I can dream. Look, he got an incredible reaction when he won the SmackDown Tag Team Championships with Shane McMahon. Look, if you're going for anyone on the SmackDown, if you're looking for someone, I don't know how on earth they wrap up the Shane McMahon story before WrestleMania, but it's as good a choice as any.
I've seen Yada look less knackered after playing his Wednesday night 5-a-side than I did Shane McMahon on Sunday. I've never seen a guy look that just exhausted, shattered, like physically broken beyond belief after wrestling, a 15-minute tag team match? And he was the hero of the hour. He was the lead in this film that Miz is always in his head, and the Miz is the supporting player.
But this is where he steps out of the shadow.
No,
right?
It isn't. He's a joke character.
Listen to me, okay? The Miz versus Daniel Bryan, the story is there, and then you have Eric Rowan in one corner and the sweatiest man in wrestling in the other.
I'll give you a rational reason.
What absurd visual that is.
I'll give you one rational reason why this is not going to happen as you want it to, as I would want it to, right? The Miz is currently feuding, tag teaming with Shane McMahon to potentially feud with him. The man wearing the WWE title is less of a priority for WrestleMania than Shane McMahon. Shane McMahon and The Miz is going to happen because the Shane McMahon match is on the chalkboard in WWE's locker room before anything they're bothered about with Daniel Bryan. It's getting the money on the card before getting the champion.
You know what the worst thing about that is? It's quite literal as well, because Shane McMahon actually drew tens of thousands of people for his return match at WrestleMania 32. Ticket sales were crawling. They bring the money back, and thus the money rolled in. So I can almost, as much as I hate to say it, from like an objective, detached standpoint, Shane McMahon is the money. So Shane McMahon versus Bryan then? I mean, for Christ's sake.
We've got that. If the Miz is in his corner, that doesn't count.
I would be emotionally invested in that match, if nothing else, for not quite the reasons they would want.
Right, let's move on to Asuka then. There's a danger here with all the Becky Lynch, Charlotte, Ronda Rousey stuff that the SmackDown Women's Championship either gets overlooked or gets devalued, with people talking about winning opportunities at Elimination Chamber and then say, actually, I want to get involved in this match. How do they go about organising the SmackDown Women's Championship match, and who should Asuka face?
I mean, I'll go first. It's okay because Charlotte's the one. For me, I think I don't need Charlotte in that Raw main event between Rousey and Lynch, because I think there's a great rematch on the table. And there's a few different ways you can book it, which I think in a way it makes it more intriguing to try and figure out the result than last year when Asuka's streak was online, because I think most of us were assured that Asuka was going to win.
Yeah.
So the shock of the finish wasn't sort of, well, which way will this go? Whereas this time around, it is that Charlotte's beaten her before, so can talk about how she beat her with one arm last year. Asuka is a different Asuka this time. She's had a rough year, but she's come out the other side. There's instant story there. Plus, if Charlotte wins again, then you've got this great story to get you to another match to say, look, no matter how good you are, Asuka, you can't beat Charlotte at WrestleMania. You'll never be this empress in WWE because there's already a queen. And I just think the SmackDown title risks being devalued almost to a laughingstock if it's thrown into a multi-man match. Asuka is the last person that needs to be anywhere near something meaningless, because we watched what happened when she was given daft stuff to work with last year. Like, the gimmick was dead. The gimmick was absolutely dead, and yet somehow they've resuscitated it. So for me, the only way to kind of keep any of that like sort of positivity behind her is to give her a match that matters. And I just think the Royal Rumble showed us that it's slim pickings. When Charlotte entered that match, at least a little bit of it came to life for a bit, and then it all fell away again until the last 5 or 10 minutes.
If not Charlotte, then who, Michael Sidgwick?
The problem Michael Hamflett is doing right now is that he's Gado booking a Vince McMahon promotion. You're giving them far too much credit. One thing Vince McMahon can pull out of his hat is he can get 5, 6, 7 meaningless performers, put them under a ladder, and just create something like really exciting on the back of it if there's no depth to it, irrespective of that. I think that for everything we said about the SmackDown, like, men's world title scene, it's like doubly, if not triply true of the women. Like, I'm not complaining. The TLC main event, like, illustrates just how good the top of that division is, what an incredible match it was, and 2, if not 3 of them are like the biggest stars in the company right now. But underneath, it's like, it's really not good. It's like, it's comedy, it's superficial, there's a lack of talent.
It's not a tiered system.
No, not at all. It's literally all or nothing with that SmackDown women's division. I mean, Naomi's probably the only one who could, like, rest comfortably between those, like, drastic highs and lows. And I think that, because I do think the triple threat is happening, and I think it should happen, I think Asuka, short of, like, a worthy singles opponent, unless, and this is equally probable, as grim as it may sound, they just stick her against someone like Naomi on the pre-show, just for, like, that's the kind of thing they would do. I don't want them to do it, but it's the kind of thing they would do. I think short of that, Asuka more than warrants, like, a showcase multi-woman ladder match for the SmackDown Women's title, and he could do various subplots. He could, like, pay off Mandy Rose versus Naomi with some like, wicked bump that Mandy Rose, like, a proper bit of comeuppance. He could do some, like, cowardly shtick with the Iconics. Like, there's a lot of scope to do an interesting and exciting match that compensates for the lack of individual star power on that SmackDown Women's scene.
It's really difficult, but I was looking through the rosters and trying to pick, and I ended up having to look across on the Raw roster and thinking, some convoluted way where we do a trade, or because they say, well, if the SmackDown women are coming over to challenge for the Raw title, especially when it comes to, like, the likes of Charlotte, with almost no justification, we're going to have someone go the other way. I was looking at Ember Moon until the news about her injury came out.
Yeah, it's really sad. Worst time of year for them to get injured.
An Ember Moon Asuka match needs no introduction, does it? It's just going to be an absolute barn burner.
Lots left on the table from NXT.
All they could do is just tell the writers to sit this play out and just, like, do, like, loads of videos on the NXT stuff where they can actually book. Perfect.
And the only other one I could look at and justify really booking it is Alexa Bliss.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's a really tough sell beyond that. And how on earth they get to some of these matches, I don't know. Hopefully...
Through good booking?
Hopefully through good booking, and hopefully there'll be some developments over the next few weeks on SmackDown Live. Right, let's move on to another big match that is... well, always at WrestleMania, it seems, except at the moment it is not at WrestleMania 35, and that is who The Undertaker will face. Talk about him not having a match this year. We know his track record recently, obviously. For me, I look at that when they say he might not have a match and think he hasn't got that many years left.
He's got none.
And
He hasn't had a match since WrestleMania 29. He's done stuff at WrestleMania, but none of them could really be generously called matches. I read the news about if we're not going to have something big for The Undertaker, we shouldn't have The Undertaker at all. And I don't know what annoyed me more. I don't know if there's ego at play with The Undertaker himself, and I'd like to think not, because he's been in the industry as long as he's been in.
He just gets dragged out for these things, doesn't he?
Yeah. Or if that's the company somehow thinking that what they showed us last year was big. John Cena sitting in the front row getting drunk, and then a bantery little squash in the middle of the card. Is that big? Is Undertaker doing nothing to contribute to a Bray Wyatt feud, to bury him in a nothing match? Big.
We popped huge in the office watching that Taker Elias Cena segment. Don't lie.
Because it was daft.
But
not
something like
big.
that, yeah.
Not because it was big. I'm not an Undertaker fan, but I'm not suggesting that he doesn't have a place on the biggest wrestling show of the year. I'm even more less of a Kane fan, and I'm even saying you could put them two together for the pyro, the entrances, the fire, in like a little squash of Hawkins and Ryder in a one-segment moment of WrestleMania. A little palate cleanser in between matches that actually matter. But I think to waste somebody on the main roster against The Undertaker when, look, he can't be carried, his aura is diminishing, which is worse for the guy that he's going to drop with a tombstone. Like, the last thing you want to do is take somebody who's in a position at the moment like Finn Balor. You know, how do you bounce from Finn Balor onto, like, from Brock Lesnar onto a bigger star? Certainly not on The Undertaker, drop him on his head. You know?
Is there no argument here that you have The Undertaker's final match at WrestleMania this year? Because
it's one of those things where until it happens, I'm not going to let myself think it's going to happen, because I want nothing more. I'm way kinder on The Undertaker than my esteemed fellow namesake is right now. Like, The Undertaker at one point was the best character and the best wrestler on the entire planet, and those things are usually mutually exclusive. I would love to see some kind of retirement angle where either he knows he's retiring, so he gets himself in the best possible shape, in the best possible mental shape, and just does like a 10-minute whirlwind of a great, great, great job. But I just don't think he's capable of it. I've seen enough really depressing evidence of that. So I do think if they were going to go to the last the last ride, so to speak, just have a vicious upstart heel just elbow his face off.
I think the retirement that people want for The Undertaker is a fallacy. There's no such thing as a retirement for The Undertaker because there's no season finale in WWE. And
We've already seen it and it didn't happen.
There's no Undertaker finale because it didn't happen. Like, he left his coat and gloves in the ring and everybody cried on Twitter and said, "Thank you, Taker." And then they literally magicked them back in the ring the following year.
Hats, gloves, 10 million Saudi dollars.
Like, that's it, like lightning bolt, psh, like briefcase full of cash, psh, Undertaker's back. There is no happy ending for this character in a company that barely deals in endings, let alone happy one. That's not latent negativity from WhatCulture. That's WWE. They tell you that there's no off seasons, that there's no ending. So The Undertaker does not get an ending. Steve Austin didn't walk into the sunset. He came back with a sheriff's badge. Like, there is no such thing as the happy ending for your very, very favourites. The Rock hasn't wrestled in years, and when he did, it was in a 2-second squash of a mid-carder.
6.
Like, sorry, was it a 6 second squash? Like, The Undertaker, like, I'd rather see The Undertaker squash a mid-carder in 6 seconds than do anything meaningful. So I just think anyone hoping for that big final moment for The Undertaker is wasting their time.
So who should he face?
Nobody.
Nobody?
They might, like, less facetiously, the makeup of this card, as much as it seems to be serving like the full-timers for once, like every little whisper, and there's not actually many out there that I've heard, it doesn't feel that mania-worthy. And we've seen in years previous occasions where they've kind of just, as the weeks and months recede, we're going to need Taker for this. We're going to need a dead man.
Recede is quite...
Yeah.
You don't think he should face anyone?
So I think he is going to be on the card, regardless of what's being reported now. But I just can't fathom what he can do with someone who can't move effectively.
I mean, look, last year Elias was there as the sort of the dummy interruption for John Cena. Why not have The Undertaker be Elias's interruption? Tombstone, everybody happy. They've turned Elias heel again. Like, he's probably going to pay off the Jeff Jarrett storyline at the February pay-per-view. So, like,
I think for me, they should either have a well-built feud, an actual match against John Cena if the proposed stuff with Lars Sullivan isn't going to go ahead, which would make sense. An actual match with John Cena, which could be a retirement angle, or the Demon versus the Undertaker is a match people are crying out for. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be the level of quality people are expecting, or whether or not Finn is going to win that. I think he should. I think this year should possibly be where he draw a line under all this.
Yeah,
that you give yourself a WrestleMania worthy match, and you potentially, if you book it correctly, after returning him to the mid-card post-Royal Rumble, you could re-elevate Finn Balor for a move to SmackDown, for example, to take on someone like a Daniel Bryan, who I think should be WWE champion after WrestleMania.
I'd love to see the Demon pin him. I got no problem with that. Keep it quick, coup de grace, you know, almost like...
Just miss the hip.
Yeah, a passing of the torch while it can still be passed. Can it even be passed? I don't know. But like the Demon winning, because I don't ever really want to see the Demon get beat. I think it's one of the few things they can protect about Finn Balor. So I'd be willing to watch that, but I don't want to see any storyline or anything resembling a competitive match between the two.
I think the torch can still be passed, just to do a very quick aside now, because there seems to be two schools of Undertaker, like fans or lapsed fans. So there's two different schools of thought. One is that people will just love him forever for his contribution. You know what? I can't begrudge them. I don't personally feel it, but if people are willing to just cherish those memories, of which there are so many, they'll never ever let them go at this point. Those people will see him losing to an upstart mid-card babyface is a big deal, because they forever see The Undertaker as a big deal subjectively, even when like grim objective evidence is staring them in the face. And the other are like the little snarky idiots like us who just think, well, you can't work anymore and all the rest of it. And maybe it's tinged with a bit of disrespect. I can see, like, I've had this in comment sections on my articles. People say you're disrespectful to a man who has given his body in so many great matches. That's a macro debate outside of that. But regardless, the people who think it, me and you, and there are others, we're not just like latently negative WhatCulture smarks. There are others who think his time is well past.
Is it fair to say it's disillusion and it's disappointment? I want to say it's disappointment. I'm the same as you.
I don't hate him.
It's rooted in disappointment.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, just to get back to the point a little bit, I just do think that the people like me and you, I'd love to see Finn Balor stamp his gut, his greedy guts for coming back to Saudi Arabia and making a joke of himself. Like, I would love to see that. So I think whatever side of the line you fall on, I think both sides are united in, yeah, it is a passing of the torch. Like, it definitely would be received as such.
Now, there's a lot more matches obviously going to be on the WrestleMania 35 card, but we are so far away, it kind of feels difficult to book like an IC title match or a United States title match or even the women's tag titles, which we're building towards Elimination Chamber. So the final couple of predictions I want you to make for the WrestleMania 35 card, we don't have to go into too much detail here, but who should win the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal and the WrestleMania Women's Battle Royal? Sidgwick, start us off.
Ugh. I mean, is this another rhetorical question? Because the answer is, who cares? I mean, let's not be cynical for the sake of it. Let's plot backwards chronologically at the winners, if we can remember, and what them winning the matches meant, if anything. Who won the men's? Matt Hardy or Bray Wyatt?
Bray Wyatt won it last year.
Meant nothing.
No.
2017? Mojo Rawley?
Mojo.
Meant nothing. 2016?
Baron Corbin.
He eventually matured into a prominent part of Monday Night Raw. It had nothing to do with that. The year before was Big Show.
And then Cesaro before that.
Cesaro, they did try and push Cesaro. And it was one of those strange things that kind of makes a mockery of internet booking, because literally everybody said Cesaro can't really talk all that well. He's one of the best wrestlers on the entire planet. Paul Heyman's one of the best talkers on the entire planet. It should be as easy, literally, as 1 + 1 = 2. Didn't happen at all. Didn't work out like that. So they tried to use the Battle Royal originally as a vehicle with which to push Cesaro, and to their credit, they really tried to do it in a way that responded to what a lot of fans wanted. For whatever reason, it didn't work out. So I can't, in good faith, answer this question with anything but cynicism and to say, does it matter?
Well, I was just going to say, because it doesn't matter, you can do something silly with it. Kofi Kingston's years and years and years of Royal Rumble elimination escapes are celebrated, and yet he never wins the Royal Rumble. So give him one of them in a Battle Royal that he actually wins. Give him a trophy, effectively a participation trophy, for all those times he's found ways to escape getting eliminated. With a Battle Royal, he can get thrown over and over again. He could do a greatest hits, like several elimination escapes, gets back in and actually wins the thing, and then you get a banter around with the trophy.
And he gets a bit of a singles push, hopefully, off the back of it, which he
deserves. If that's something they ever feel like doing, because they're never going to give him a Royal Rumble.
For once, I've done this the reverse, where the person makes the well, not the title, but in this case the Andre the Giant Memorial Trophy, and I've booked it with a view to the Raw after WrestleMania and going forward after that, and not using it as just a throwaway thing. I put Adam Cole because we've talked a lot about the Undisputed Era coming up to the main roster and possibly that happening in the immediate aftermath of WrestleMania. And we talked about the fact the Undisputed Era, when they do get called up, they should have an immediate rush to all the gold. Adam Cole should have a singles title. He should have tag titles on the rest of the guys. And I just think this would be another added little bonus and a sort of a hint as to what's to come, that Adam Cole gets thrown in at the last second. And then you've got Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, possibly out there helping him, possibly not. I think that would just give him that launch pad to immediately come in, be cocky, then go for a singles title, and we go from there.
Not quite like that, because if they've got a trophy on the top of which, like perhaps on a level with Hulk Hogan, you've got one of the biggest, literally biggest icons of that entire company, and you've got an upstart heel faction who just think they are literally undisputed, the best thing that's ever been going. The idea of Michael Cole, Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry. Adam Cole, what a horrible comparison that is to me. He's never going to watch this. He's never going to watch this, but I still feel so bad for saying that.
You've also vindicated Vince McMahon's weird name.
No, but with Adam Cole, just kind of disrespecting that top of the trophy.
Rubbing its hair.
Yeah, rubbing its hair, like, oh, like for good luck and all the rest of it. How dare he. Like, I could actually dig that. And then if it gets smacked across his back by a heel and like a really good babyface and a really good program, then that could actually work for me. That could.
Very quickly then, WrestleMania Women's Battle Royal. Who are you giving that to?
Monkey tennis?
I'll go with Ajax because it keeps her out the rest of the card.
Yes, I agree.
They've actually made her an Andre the Giant figure in Battle Royals. She does well in them. So, like, she got in the men's Royal Rumble. She did really well at Evolution. Give her the win. Keeps her out of the
Who won the women's last year?
Naomi.
Yeah, it means nothing.
So, with that in mind, I selected... it was either going to be...
Ernest Wilbourn. Give it another couple of years,
it was
right? You'll be right here with us.
It was either going to be a banter pick like the Iconics winning it together, because I loved the stuff that they do. I just love them, but I love the stuff they did at Rumble, and the backstage interview they did is fantastic. But with the Naomi thing and the fact it's kind of a bit like the Andre the Giant, a second thought, Mandy Rose. Naomi looks like she's about to win it for 2 years in a row. Mandy Rose eliminates her. They're probably going to blow off the storyline before that, but if not that, Mandy Rose, someone they want to push. This is something they see as a reward.
Yeah.
And I think everyone else, your Sasha Banks and your Baileys, will hopefully be involved in a tag match. And then all the other bigger stars, aside from maybe Alexa Bliss, but I think Alexa Bliss is above this.
She's too good
trophy.
for this match on a WrestleMania.
Yeah, she's in it. She's winning it.
Yeah.
Surely, because she is too.
Beyond
much
that, I think they, it's just as an elevation tool, and I think Mandy Rose could really use that if the rumours are true that WWE are hot on her and want to push her more going forward. But anyway, this has been us predicting the WrestleMania 35 card. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section or on Twitter at WhatCultureWW. Watch there, you can follow all three of us. You can follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael Hamflett.
You can follow Michael Sidgwick at
Sidgwick.
You can follow me at Adam Wilbourn. As I said, you can follow us all at WhatCultureWWE. My thanks to the Michaels. Make sure you subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes or Spotify for daily podcasts, and we will see you soon.